Out of all the interactions I was expecting this chapter, a naked interaction between Shido and Bachira was not on my list. We finally got the chapter screenshots, so thanks for all the people that was helping me, but we're actually going to go through it now. The chapter starts off with the narrator saying, "What does it mean to be a genius?" The translations are kind of fucked, like some of the sentences don't make any sense, but I'm going to try my best to make them make sense. It would never be a nightmare. An entity that can't possibly be a genius. It's only when someone discovers that outline to achieve. And we're already starting with the overanalysis. This skull split in half because maybe this is the two sides of being a genius. The easy side, where it's never a nightmare because you're a genius so you can do anything that you want. And then the other side, when you're not actually discovered as a genius and people don't actually see value in what you do. Because on the easy side, we actually see that it's Reo's copy ability on the skull, which would make it easier for Nagi because somebody both sees the value in what he's doing and tries to elevate it. And then on the other side, we see the dark inky version of the skull because this is supposed to be Nagi's restriction. This is the exact same material that we see the phantoms made of later on. And because the translations are low-key fucked up, a lot of this video is going to be speculation, and it might fall apart later on when we do get the actual translations. But who the fuck cares, man? But Ego continues. But that's merely the outline of the truth, finding comfort in what can be discovered. When the act of polishing the inner ego comes to a halt, the genius loses its luster. Also funny that we're talking about geniuses and lust, because that would explain why Shido's been doing so well so far. Because he's a genius that never lets go of that lust for more. But then Anri walks in, and I'm not gonna lie, Anri bad as hell, man. Smart, dedicated, got passion, she tweaks out sometimes, like, Anri's actually the GOAT. But anyway, Anri walks into the room and says, "Are you referring to Seishiro Nagi, Mr. Ego Karo?" And then he says, "No way, I'm talking about Nagi and Reo." And then Anri replies, "I found them and invited them to the Blue Lock prison." Pretty sure that's supposed to say program, but prison's pretty accurate too. "They are the world's greatest egoist. I truly believe these are two raw gems that align with that vision. Please guide us successfully, Commander, to the grand stage of the world." That might be said backwards, but it makes more sense this way. But then Ego butts in and says, "More than that, isn't there something else you should be worried about?" And then Anri's like, "What?" Then Bachira comes up on all of the screens, running around screaming, "Nyahaha!" And then we hear Barrow screaming, "Hold on, you yellow one." That has to be a slur. And then we see Bachira, joyful as fuck, running around stealing everybody's tickets, because remember, they gotta pick what team they want to join for the third selection, saying, "Which team is everyone choosing? Can I just decide it all myself?" We need more of this in the main story. Give me more goofy shit like this. I get the main story is supposed to be a lot more serious, but like having a chapter or two every like 15, 20 chapters that is more low-key like this would be peak. Bachira's unfortunately being pursued by Kiora and Barrow, so he is kind of fucked. Barrow's about to chuck some soap at him and Kiora's got a broom. Barrow then says, "Take that, you little brat." And then Kiora just says love for some reason. I don't know what the fuck that guy's talking about. They then throw what they were holding at Bachira, and Bachira fucking swerves that shit and says, "Wrong answer. Over here, cutie." And we see Nico and Zantetsu block the path that he was going to take. And it's funny that Nico's here before Zantetsu, because I don't doubt that Zantetsu ran around the entire other parts of the stratum first before getting to this place. And Nico only got here before he did, because while Zantetsu was running around all the other places where Bachira definitely wasn't, Nico was like, where would Bachira go? He would probably go here. Anyway, Nico says, "I've cornered you, B. Please give us back our cards." And then Zantetsu says, "It's whoever that is, you know." And then Bachira says, with the biggest fucking smile on his face, "If you're gonna say that it's a dead end, you're an idiot." And then he fucking front flips over Zantetsu to jump on his back to jump over Nico. And semi-sarcastic over-analysis, isn't it so funny that all the people that Bachira gets past are the people he beats in the NEL? But Barrow and Shido, the two people that outbid him in this chase, even though Shido's not actually chasing him, are the two people that kind of stop him, because Barrow tackles him and Shido kind of blocks his path in a way. And both Shido and Barrow get higher bids than Bachira in the NEL. That's a sarcastic take though. You don't really need to take that too seriously. Just as Bachira's dunking on Nico and Zantetsu, Zantetsu screams out, "Somebody stop me!" "You mean him, brother." And Nico tipples over and he's like, "Ah!" Bachira continues his sprint and he says, "Is it over? Let's play tag some more, Ego Stars." But the place that he's running to is unfortunately blocked off. And he sees that and he's like, Huh? A dead end? Huh?" Then Reo comes out of nowhere and says, what are you guys up to? But then Bachira says, oh, it's Reo. Was there always a wall in this hallway? But then Reo replies, oh, that was probably just closed a moment ago. It's a corner connecting to the top 6 rooms, right? It's a barrier to keep us separated from the other members during the aptitude test. And then Bachira's like, whoa, I see. Nigga think he corona. But unfortunately for Bachira, Nico and Barrow are hot on his tail. Nico says, catch them! And then Barrow says, go for it, Purplehead. But just before Reo can do anything, Bachira jumps off the wall to grab the vent and then climb inside. The whole time he's just like, huh! And Reo says, oh hello, monkey man. And this nigga Bachira just says, red light, green light, ooh ooh ah ah. But luckily for him, these 4 can't catch up to him, which I'm surprised Kiora can't catch up to him because this is an athletic check. And it's parkour. Low-key, Kiora is selling the bag right now. Do something! Zantetsu sat there fucking growling up like a dog. But anyway, Nico says, damn it, he got away. And Kiora says, where is he going? And Barrow says, don't ooh ah me, let's find him. This nigga Zantetsu's so fucking unserious, man. On all 4s going, ooh ah. Nico starts to emote and he says, next time you see him, catch him, Reo-kun. We need our tickets back. I assume Barrow then tells Kiora to go over that way, because this nigga just shouts, you, go over there! This stupid fuck Zantetsu tries to push the door open, even though it actually would have come from the ceiling. And Nico says, this way, Zantetsu-kun. The wall isn't opening up, so don't get any ideas. And Reo looks like he's actually fucking done with all of these people. But he thinks to himself as he pulls his card out, whoa, that was close. Looks like my card's still safe. Angered After King, I command you, select and report your choice. B1127 or B1127, I don't know. Pretty much though, he's basically just thinking back to what Ego was saying about Ego saying select your teams. But Reo's kind of hovering his finger over Nagi and he thinks to himself, what's the right choice to make? What truly is my ego, I wonder? Then POV switch over to Nagi, who's training with Karasu, Otoya, Yukimiya, and himself. I'm pretty sure Rin's like, obviously, if this was a full field, I'm pretty sure Rin's like down here somewhere. But anyway, Yukimiya's sprinting and then Nagi thinks to himself, whoa, man, he's lightning fast on his feet. But Yukimiya looks back and says, whew, I'll wrap up today's training right here. Can't have any fatigue lingering for tomorrow's big show, and dealing with those 2 is exhausting. And then Otoya speaks in hieroglyphs, and Karasu just says, huh? Otoya then says, did you call me? It's Yuki. Karasu then matches Yukimiya and says, honestly, talking to you is exhausting, delicate glasses wearer. You can just call him blind. But then Yukimiya replies, you've got such a light-hearted vibe, you know? When I'm with you all, my own feelings start to seem so ridiculous. And to overanalyze, I think this is to do with his ego and his optic neuropathy. And I think that's because now he's been segregated from the other people in the Blue Lock program, and he's just hanging out with Karasu, Otoya, Shido, Rin, and Nagi. And they're egoists in the sense that they won't just like give him a load of fake compliments. I think that's starting to point out to Yukimiya that his own feelings are kind of ridiculous. Because up until this point, he's still operating in the wrong mentality. Don't worry, this is stuff that I am going to talk about on his How He Made It. Don't worry, it is still working. I've actually found a new formula for that, but I'm going to yap about that in another video. But then Karasu replies, well, I guess that's just the level of your ego. Don't pretend to see someone else's resolve, you fool. And again, we're bringing up the level of his ego because him and Nagi both have horrible egos at this point in time. It's not that bad in this chapter, but considering they fail later on, Yukimiya doesn't score a fucking goal and Nagi gets kicked out of the NEL. Karasu saying to Yukimiya that it's the level of his ego kind of points out that his ego is bad at the moment. And because Yukimiya's is bad and he's ranked higher than Nagi's is also bad. Because if you compare Yukimiya's and Nagi's level of ego to the other people in the top 6, Rin finishes first in the NEL. Shido basically finishes second because first is tied, but he's basically third. Karasu clutched up in the PXG game to block Isagi. Otoya got past Chris Prince and broke the link up between Nagi and Reo. Then even Yukimiya, because he's like kind of the middle ground in between these people that have good egos and Nagi who has a bad one, and he's like just in the middle, he does initially fail when it comes to him dribbling past most of Manshine and then shooting and getting blocked. But because he's kind of riding that borderline in between good egos and bad egos, he can improve later on and be somewhat useful because he scores in that Manshine game. It's just kind of after that, he doesn't really do too much. Like, he helps in the Ubers game, he helps in the PXG game, I'm not going to downplay that, but it's not that much if you compare it to, like, other people, for example. But yapping aside, Otoya says, to me, light is the highest compliment. Fluffy and fun is the ultimate dream. This nigga's actually just a chill guy. Yukimiya then replies, that's exactly it. We just don't vibe. And he's saying that to Otoya, and Otoya is a freedom type and he's a restricted type. And I know in a recent video I said that I thought Karasu was a freedom type, but actually hearing, I think it was Usami who said this, her explanation for Karasu being a restricted type, it makes sense that Yukimiya can get along with Karasu because they're both restricted. But he can't get along with Otoya because Otoya's freedom, he's restricted. Basically, just for the quick rundown of Karasu being a restricted ego type, he basically just listens to the rules that are in place because when he's picked as like a CDM in the U20 game, he's like, yeah, I knew that. I'm pretty sure it's just after he says to Shido that we need to free you from Kunigami that he then goes through the evolution to get Metavision. You might need to double check that though, but I'm not gonna talk too much about Karasu being restricted now. I'll update that in another video. But anyway, Karasu then says, that kind of stuff weighs heavy, you know? But before things can heat up anymore, Yukimiya and Karasu both admit that they don't want to fight over this. Yukimiya says, well, I'm not really looking to start a fight or anything. I'm an adult and I believe in peaceful resolutions. Over-analysis, but with Yukimiya saying he believes in peaceful resolutions, is that not a hint that he's got the wrong mentality at this point in time? Because he's trying to be peaceful, he's trying to make it easier, which would be a freedom thing. But when you fast forward to the NEL, he evolves by saying that him and Isagi are going to each other. I'm just gonna censor it because I don't know what the fuck TikTok's gonna flag as a warning or not. Anyway, Yukimiya saying that he believes in peaceful resolutions could be a hint that he does have the wrong mentality at this point in time, because that reply was fresh off what Karasu was saying about the level of his ego. So for him to say this, it means that he doesn't understand the level of his ego. Or even the genre of his ego, because this seems like a freedom thing, and he's restricted. But then Karasu replies, same here, not bothered at all. Honestly, I couldn't care less about their lives. So I'm saying that Karasu and Yukimiya can somewhat get along more than Yukimiya and Otoya because Otoya doesn't even step into this conversation. Otoya said that one thing or those two things and then kind of disappeared. But Karasu can kind of understand and level with Yukimiya a lot more compared to Otoya. So maybe this is kind of more evidence that Karasu is restrictive, but this is an over-analysis. Do little interactions like this actually mean anything? Not really. Can it prove stuff? Maybe. Because, funny enough, in this one panel here, we see Yukimiya, who is confirmed to be restrictive. We see Nagi, who's basically confirmed to be restrictive. And Karasu, who's kind of confirmed to be restrictive. Otoya doesn't appear here at all. Again, over-analysis though, don't take it too seriously. But Nagi then thinks to himself, yeah, it's definitely the top 6. Just a bunch of egotistical folks, huh? But Otoya sneaks up behind Nagi and says, hey, I'm gonna take off first, Nagi Seishiro. Catch you later. And this just kind of proves how chill Otoya is because he had no need to say this to Nagi. Like, he literally could have just dipped and nobody would have cared. But we get some light-hearted competition with Otoya because he says, when it comes to our little competition, I always come out on top. And funny enough, you did, my nigga. He got eliminated. But then Nagi looks over to Rin and he thinks, monster, Itoshi Rin. You are not fucking wrong. You should have seen this nigga in the PXG game. But Nagi then says, hey, pull it back. How about a little one-on-one with me? And then Rin's like, huh? I'm not interested in you, pale one. That has to be a slur. Go and worship at an altar of Kiyoshi's poop. Avatar The Last Airbender mentioned. I'm also pretty sure Kiyoshi's supposed to be Isagi. So he would actually say, go and worship the altar of Isagi's shit. But then Nagi thinks to himself, after all I've done, am I not even a blip on your radar? I'm saying after all I've done because he did actually trick Rin with the whole like fake shot and then that got him kind of riled up. Nagi then says, that guy, and Rin too, shining in the brilliance of Isagi. Isagi has already, even the great Itoshi Rin can be transformed by this. Within the Blue Lock prison. Again, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to say program, but prison isn't inaccurate either. And I know that Kiyoshi is supposed to be Isagi, but who the fuck is this? Is this actually Rin? Anyway though, we go into this edgy as fuck panel, and Nagi says, oh, I just want to take you down. I want to give it a shot. I want to battle one more time. All of it. Every last bit. And I can't lie, this art style goes absolutely crazy. His aura manifesting like this goes so fucking hard. This might be the new version of like that Kaneki post where he's like looking up to the sky crying. Only this is the opposite one because this is like a white-haired dude that's locked the fuck in. But we again POV switch back over to Reo. And the narrator says, once again, he bumped into Isagi. Isagi's flipping through all the recordings of all the games. And he's thinking to himself, Nagi's team or Rin's team? He then turns around to see that Reo walked into the exact same room and he says, Reo? And then Reo says, you're caught in a dilemma, huh? Which team to join? Same here, buddy. That catches Isagi off guard and he's like, huh? Aren't you the one who's all about Team Nagi? Reo takes a seat and he says, ha, I don't want to hear it from the one who tore me and Nagi apart. And Isagi replies, oh, I'm sorry. To be honest, Isagi, it wasn't even your fucking fault. Nagi chose to join your team. It wasn't you who tore them apart. But Reo starts to monologue, choosing Nagi's team to play football together. I was all set to do that, but now I'm just all mixed up. And Isagi's like, why? And Reo replies, yeah, well, during the second selection, Nagi picked you, right? I came all this way thinking I'd show him what I'm made of, but seeing Nagi rise to the top 6 is just overwhelming. When I calmly compare myself to his current level, I can't shake the feeling that Nagi is becoming more and more out of reach. I don't have the confidence to stand side by side and battle. But if I let this moment slip away, I have this nagging feeling that there won't be another chance. But if I show that flawed side of me again, I feel like Nagi might drift away even further. What should I even do? I'm completely lost. And then he thinks, huh? I'm blabbering too much when it comes to Isagi. This guy doesn't know my pain. I don't really need you to understand. It's not that it has to be this way. And then Isagi butts in before he can think more and says, I feel the same way, Reo. Because Rin is like that to me. It's all about... And then Reo's eyes start to glimmer because he actually sees somebody that understands how he feels. And maybe this is a hint to the potential link-up between Reo and Isagi, because we know that Ego's special training for Reo was to watch all the other people's playstyles so he could copy them, making him the ultimate puzzle piece for Isagi. So then, with them both having the same or similar mindsets and being able to understand each other, it would then make their link-up even fucking better, because Isagi might be thinking, okay, right now, I need you to copy a Bachira technique. And then Reo, being on the same page as Isagi, might be able to copy that Bachira technique in that moment. So they'll have more of a reflexive link-up because Isagi will be thinking, okay, I need an RU weapon in this specific moment. So then again, because Reo and Isagi are on the same wavelength, Reo might copy it and use it without Isagi needing to tell him to do that. Here's the fucking hoping though. But Reo then thinks, huh? Is Isagi the same? Yes, nigga, you're both talented learners. Reo and Isagi, there's a psychology we share after all. But then Isagi continues, but yeah, that's right. We have to fight together here. He might just become someone who's out of reach. I don't want to live with that regret. And then Isagi circles Rin's team with my goat Shido. And Reo thinks to himself, I thought they were just enemies to be defeated. Who knew you could be so bold? You mean the guy that met you in the cafeteria in the first selection and said that he'd be the team to beat you? Oh my god, it's surprising he's so bold, right? Anyway though, Isagi then says, got it. Reo, I really appreciate it. Reo thinks, you're a good guy. But then Isagi continues, thanks to you, I've made up my mind. I'll walk the path I've chosen. I'll prove that I'm not wrong. And then Reo thinks, if only the way we met had been different, maybe we could have understood each other better. But after hearing that, Reo says, see you tomorrow. And then Isagi walks off, waving his card, saying, back to the battlefield. Reo kind of thinks on what he just said a bit more. So, back to the battlefield? Ha! It's almost ridiculously refreshing. That's all that's on Isagi's mind, is football, huh? And he thinks, I think I'm finally starting to understand, just a little, the reason why Nagi captivates me. It's a feeling in my heart. It feels so light. And as he's getting up, he thinks, right now, to be completely honest, I feel like I really want to fight next to Nagi. And then we flip over to poor Henri trying to stop Bachira from running away with everyone's tickets. Henri says, oh my goodness, what should I do? What should I do? And as she's looking at the monitors to figure out where Bachira went, she says, where did you go, honey boy? And we see fucking Bachira army crawling through the vents. He says, run. Nigga really think he's Corona. And I'm not gonna lie, the first time I read this, I thought Henri pressed a button to make this pop up and it was supposed to be like a booby trap. But it turns out it was just Barrow with a broom. So Barrow hits the vents with his broom and he somehow manages to find Bachira and hit him with that. No wonder the nigga got predator eye. He can see Bachira through the fucking walls. But then Barrow screams, "Is it here, you little punk?" And then Zantetsu's like, "Oh, found you." Bachira's run is still not fucking finished. He squeezes out of the vents and fucking swings on over. All while saying, "Catch me if you can." Anri then sees where Bachira's running to and he goes, "Oh, right there. Path blocked." And she presses a button on the keyboard. We then see the wall come down to block Bachira, and Bachira's like, "Oh no." And then this nigga just swerves to the right and says, "But I can go this way." Barrow's still screaming, "Hey, wait up!" Poor Anri's getting so confused. She's like, "Oh, seriously, which way? This way? Oh, I messed up. I totally don't get it." This nigga ego clearly doesn't give a fuck about any of this. It's so funny. Because, like, they really did keep it, so all he had to focus on was football. Because even just to kind of yap about this a little bit more, it's so fucking funny that Anri was the one to tell Nagi to leave and it wasn't Ego. Kind of because you obviously know that Ego hates him, but it's also because at the start of the manga, we was told that Ego's only job was to focus on football. So it's so fucking funny to me that Anri's got to deal with all these outside problems because Ego doesn't give a fuck. But Anri accidentally lifts up one of the doors, and it turns out to be the one that was right next to Reo's room that was supposedly connected to the top 6. Reo hears this and he's like, "Huh? It's opened." And then as he sees the corridor leading to his boyfriend, we all know he's going to walk down that shit. We then switch over back to Bachira, and Bachira fucking dodges Barrow trying to knock him out with this broom. And if you look at the power that Barrow put into this, low-key he's trying to end Bachira's career. If this hit, his ankles were gone. But Bachira's still running strong. He turns a corner because he's actually ran into the top 6's area now. The whole time, he's still running, screaming, "Catch me if you can, old man." And then just as he turns the corner, he gets jump scared by my goat's naked ass. And he's obviously caught off guard. We then see Shido nakedly squatting just in the middle of the fucking corridors. Not even in a training room, by the way. Just letting that shit hang in the corridors. That's actually crazy. He turns around and he's like, Bachira then says, "A pervert, what the heck are you doing?" And Shido replies, "Unleashing life, naked exercise routine." That's my fucking goat. Cock swinging in the air, doing some yoga. That's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm so glad that we finally got an interaction between Shido and Bachira because they're both freedom geniuses and they're both the naked people of the program. But for the people that actually read the bios on all the characters, you'd know that Shido does do naked yoga every morning. And then obviously because of the manga and the anime, we saw that Bachira walks around naked quite a lot. So this interaction, as crazy as it seems, I'm surprised it took us this long. Hopefully we get more interactions with Shido and Bachira and maybe some with Barrow and Nico as well. Because Nico and Barrow are right fucking there. And maybe Nico didn't see because he's got that hair covering his eyes. Thank God, because he is a minor as well. Well, to be fair, they all are, so it's not too bad. But Barrow's fully locked in. Eyes white. I assume he might be using Predator Eye. Again, it's a jokey analysis. Don't take that seriously. But he's probably tunnel visioned on Bachira. And that's why we don't see him say anything about Shido being completely naked. Because even though Barrow wouldn't care about Shido, Barrow's whole thing about like being tidy and neat and all that shit, he would have said something to Shido, surely. But anyway, Barrow charges in and is able to actually tackle Bachira. And then he says, "I've got you now, you little rascal." And then Bachira says, "Yowza." But Shido, being the absolute goat that he is, turns around so everyone can see what he's packing and then just starts doing stretches. We then POV switch back over to Reo, who's walking up the corridor to the top 6. And he walked past one of the training rooms. And the training room obviously had Nagi in it. And Nagi's obviously training because it's a fucking training room. But anyway, he says while he's training, more. And then he shoots and scores. But we then go into his inner monologue and he says, "I want to raise my reaction. I want to unleash a stronger shot. This isn't enough yet. I can't win with such grace. Ugh, more. I crave a new version of myself." Reo decides to watch Nagi train and he thinks, "Nagi, you're really doing it, huh? Looking great. Are you talking about football?" Anyway, Reo leans against the wall and he says, "If you can feel that fire, then that's all I need. Right now, that's how it is. I've transformed into someone who can think like this because I climbed up all on my own, being apart from you. I finally feel like I can say it." Oh my god, they're gonna confess. We then flash back to when Nagi and Reo split up before the second selection officially started. Then we go into what he wished he said, which was, "Sure thing, Nagi. Go on, get out there, beyond the dreams that await you. Let's meet again, alright?" And then the narrator says, "Leave?" Or is that supposed to be like, "leave"? I don't know. But we see Reo tying his hair up because he's about to suck Nagi's dick. And Nagi's thinking, this won't do at all. Stronger, more intense, more. And again, like I was saying at the start of the video, if you even remember what I was saying in that video, because it's like 3 parts ago, we start to see the ink phantom shadow thing come out of the ground. Only this time, it's kind of different because we've got Karasu, Atoya, Yukimiya, and Baro. And his main focus on these 4 was Baro, which is kind of interesting. Low-key kind of hoping that we see a Baro versus Nagi sort of rivalry in the World Cup. Because we did get that interaction in the first selection when they played against each other and Baro called him a slave and then he was like, I'm not a slave. But anyway, Nagi sees these phantoms and he thinks, surpass it. We then see one of the balls come out of the wall and Nagi starts to challenge all of these fucking phantoms. The ball's coming from behind him, he traps it with his heel, I'm pretty sure that is, and then flicks it over everyone with the bottom of his foot. He then sprints through all of the phantoms, and then finally catches up to an Isagi phantom. He thinks, yeah, not enough. Low-key, how people see Isagi needs to be studied, because he's kind of just pretty chill if you think about it. But then we see these phantoms of him looking like an absolute fucking demon. And to be fair, he actually is a bit of a demon in the NEL. But at this point in time, Isagi wasn't that bad. I mean, like, scary-wise, that bad. I could understand seeing this phantom after his Manshine game, but here, like, doing a bit too much. I am not being serious about this. Because even Reo was kind of shocked that he was bold and a good guy when I guess we get the hindsight of seeing him through the entire story. But the bold part being surprising, I don't know how you're surprised. He literally called you out in the first selection. And the good guy part is like, is it really that surprising? Again, though, I'm not being too serious about this. I just find it pretty funny. But getting back to it, Nagi doesn't know what to do against the Isagi Phantom until Reo passes him the ball. And Reo says, no way, I can do it. Then somebody thinks, maybe it's Reo, you need to push yourself even more. And then we see him do pretty much the exact same pass that led to the 5-stage volley in the Manshine game. Because Nagi's getting pressed by Isagi similar to the Manshine game. And he looks up this time to see where the ball is because he doesn't know that Reo's actually on his team and helping him. And he thinks, nice pitch, where did it come from? And then Reo thinks, go for it, genius, don't look back. And then Nagi thinks, if it's this, and then we see him kind of go into the exact same motion of what led up to the 5-stage volley. We see him trap the ball and Isagi comes to press him. And then Reo thinks, more freely, that's right. And then Nagi thinks, creativity, absorption. He then does the first stage fake volley, which Isagi's Phantom is able to catch up to, which Nagi's surprised about. Nigga, this is your vision of what Isagi's like. How are you surprised? And then he catches the ball with his foot and says, beyond that point. He then pulls it back similar to what he did against Isagi's Phantom against Karasu's team and says, fire away. He then chips the ball up and Reo says, go forth. We then see this cyclone similar to the cyclone that we saw for the 5-stage volley. And then somebody says, to the ends of the earth. Oh wait, I'm stupid. It was probably Reo saying, go forth to the ends of the earth. But then Nagi shoots and he says, whoa, dude, I'm totally feeling it. Godly vibes. He says godly vibes and Bachira in that game against Manshine says, I'm a god. Clearly that has something to do with like the instinctual feeling of geniuses because they always talk about like godly vibes or being a god. And I'm also pretty sure there was a guy, I think he might be called like Kilber or something, that describes geniuses as like gods and talented learners as demons. And to a degree, just to kind of expand on that, it makes a lot of sense because realistically, geniuses are gods because they're godly in some sort of aspect, whether it's trapping, dribbling, some sort of thing like that. And talented learners could be demons because these godly characters have to make contracts with these talented learners. And you could say that that's a devil's contract. And with that, the talented learners essentially steal the power of the geniuses to use it for something. And although it's putting the geniuses into an environment that's good for their weapon or whatever, it still comes at the expense that the talented learner set it up and they're basically siphoning the power of the genius for their own needs. So low-key, that take makes a lot of sense. So shout out to Killua. I'm pretty sure he's called that. If you're not called that, my bad, bro, but you know who you are. You know, the funniest part about all of this is that Usami was jokingly saying that it was going to take me 40 minutes to cover this chapter, and we're getting close to that 40-minute mark. But anyway, before we get there, let's finish this off. This is the final part. The narrator says, waiting for the next heat as Nagi scores the goal against the Blue Lock Man. Just as he scores, Asagi's Phantom starts to fade, and Nagi starts to tipple over. He then says, it's finished, a new technique. So, kind of just to pause for a second, this could be a new technique because the 5-stage volley was essentially the endgame version of what he was supposed to score. But this technique of fake shooting and then maybe potentially trapping or flicking the ball up and then shooting could have been the technique. Because that in and of itself is pretty recreatable. Doing a fake shot is pretty recreatable. Because if we analyze what he did in the Manshine game, his formula for that attempted goal was a fake shot. Because Agi literally compliments Nagi on the shot attempt he had, it was just the foundations building up to it that failed. Because should Nagi have actually made a good pass to Agi in that situation, the foundations would have been there, so he probably would have scored. And that was kind of built off doing a fake shot. It's not technically a fake shot, but considering that the 2-gun volley is a copy of that, and that's built off doing a fake shot, it's pretty safe to say that his attempt was also a fake shot. Because maybe the difference was intention between Nagi's 2-gun volley and Isagi's 2-gun volley. Because Nagi flicking his leg over the ball could have just been him trying to move into a position where he could shoot from. It wasn't technically a feint in the sense that he was trying to purposefully make a fake shot. It was more of like some sort of movement he had to do so his left leg wouldn't get in the way of his right leg shooting. So then Isagi's took that formula and actually made it more consistent with the 2-gun volley. So him intentionally doing a fake shot here is different to his Manshine attempt because his Manshine attempt might have not been intentional. I'm only putting a might on this because we actually have no idea. Because I think you could make a solid argument for him purposefully doing that with his leg, and you can make a pretty solid argument for him not intentionally doing it. Because Nagi at that point, we was kind of driving home that he was still experimenting, that he didn't understand football that much. So maybe in that moment, it wasn't fully intentional for him to do that fake shot with his left foot. But I am just speculating. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Nagi then goes into a flashback about Reo or vice versa, and the narrator says Reo will keep on searching for Nagi. So I'm a dumbass because it's actually Reo thinking about the first time that he met Nagi because he starts to circle that he does want to join Nagi's team. And he says, beyond the dreams that await you, let's meet again, alright? And then we either see Reo handing his ticket into Ego or wherever he's supposed to give it into, or he's showing Nagi, because he then says genius. And we see that he's circled Nagi's team first, and surprisingly, he circled Shido's team second. So I imagine how this worked out is that you have your first option, and then if that team's too full, you then get your second option. And it's nice to see that Reo would actually like to play with Shido again. Low-key, I hope we see a link up in the future. Because my goat can always appreciate somebody else's explosion. And Reo, pretty fucking cool character, man. Can copy anyone. Like, that's super helpful. But we jump forward in time to the start of the U20 match. And Nagi says, hey, Reo, I've got something to say. We then see an outside shot of Blue Lock and all the fans in the stands. And Nagi's running, with his top off, by the way, running up the corridor to get to the pitch. Kind of out of breath. And he's like, still, not yet, but... And then we see his aura manifesting over his head. And I'm not going to lie, this shit goes so hard. And then it finally ends with Nagi running onto the pitch at the start of the U20 game. Holy fuck, we're finally done. This took me like fucking 2 hours to make. I don't think I've got anything I want to say at the end of this now. I might just do like a quick reading through just to see if there's anything that I missed. Okay, maybe I missed saying something about this because Nagi is again relying on Reo to give him an idea of how to be Isagi because that's where this comes from. So then, this pass from Reo gives Nagi the idea to do the fake stage volley. It's not the exact same one, but it's funny that Nagi had to rely on Reo to give him this technique in the first place. And then for him to actually use it in a game, he needs Reo again. Because even when he plays against Bachira, he decides to do that fake shot and then pass to Reo in the end anyway. So it's so funny to me that Nagi thinks that he came up with this new technique of doing a fake shot. The whole time it's actually just been given to him by Reo. I like that we see that Isagi was going to be able to stop the first 2 fake shots. Kind of similarly to how he stops 2 of the shots that he was going to take for the 5 stage. So if any new people was going to read this manga and the main manga at the exact same time, it gives them hints that Isagi was going to keep up with him somewhat. How the actual fuck did Bachira go uncaught for this goddamn long? Bro clutched up a 5v1. But then again, it makes sense that he's able to go on this solo run by himself and get past so many people because that's what he does in Bachira. Barrow was genuinely trying to end Bachira's career with this because you can't say that this was not out of bloodlust. Bro was swinging so hard, he almost fell over. You know how much power you've got to put into that? Considering that he's like one of the strongest people in the program as well, you should count your lucky stars that you dodged that Bachira. Holy shit. We need more interactions with Shido and literally anybody else. Listen, I'm a Shido glazer, but you've got to understand, there was like a period in the NEL where we didn't see or hear from that nigga for like 3 years. To be honest, that's kind of just being a Shido fan in general. You never fucking see him. Kanashiro, if you can hear me, please, in the World Cup, give me more interactions. Give me more goals. Give me literally anything. For this nigga to be top 3 and us have this little information about him, actually insane. Because I can sit here and I could probably speculate and explain all the parts of Shido, and it probably could be true, but considering we've got no concrete evidence about anything about him, we need more. We genuinely need more. Also, it's so ironic that Rin tells Nagi to go and praise an altar that has Isagi shit on it while he's so obsessed with him. But I'm pretty sure that's kind of everything I've wanted to yap about. So thanks for watching this. Thanks for watching the entire thing if you watched the entire thing. I appreciate the love and support. Thanks for indulging my bullshit as always. Never stop updating your world's perspective. Drink well to look after yourself. Peace.